Like, Lee Bardugo, I am coming for you. Watch your back. Hey guys, it's Avery from A Very Avid Reader, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm very excited because I'm going to be doing a review of The King of Scars Duology by Lee Bardugo. So this is obviously Rule of Wolves. I recently read both of them, but I only have the hard copy of Rule of Wolves because I read King of Scars on my Kindle. Also, I just realized I haven't taken the sticker off this, so that's kind of embarrassing. But so I just recently read King of Scars, and then right after I finished that, I read Rule of Wolves. I did it this past week, and let's just say I have a lot of thoughts. You know when you just read a book and you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is good, I'm enjoying this book, but I don't really have any specific things I want to say about it. See, that's when you know, like, I don't need to do a review on that because I don't really have anything to say. But boy, do I have a lot of thoughts about this duology, especially this book right here. And most of those thoughts include Lee Bardugo, how dare you? Who gave you the right? Because I have very mixed feelings about this duology. So I'm gonna do an in-depth kind of talk about both of the books, but I'm also gonna start off with a quick little spoiler-free review. So if you haven't read them yet, then you can watch that part and then go read them and then come back and watch the rest of my video and see if you agree with me on some of these things that happened. So let's get started, and we'll start with a spoiler-free review. So the King of Scars duology picks up 3 years after the original Shadow and Bone trilogy and 1 year after the Six of Crows duology. I guess I should say, even though this isn't a spoiler for this series, it is a spoiler for the Shadow and Bone series. So if you haven't read Shadow and Bone or Six of Crows, I would say you pretty much need to read those two series before you read this one. I feel like in some series, like the Shadowhunters universe, you can pick up maybe without starting the Mortal Instruments, even though you should. But this is definitely one of those series where you need to read the Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows before you start this one so that you're acquainted with the characters. So King of Scars picks up 3 years after Shadow and Bone, and Nikolai is serving as the king of Ravka. And I was so excited to have Nikolai be in this book because he was like by far my favorite character in the Shadow and Bone series. He is so funny. So I was so excited that he was going to have his own series. There are pretty much three main characters that this book follows. So it's Nikolai, and then Zoya, who is serving as his like commander or his general, and also Nina. We see that Nikolai is still dealing with the presence of the demon that the Darkling turned him into. That's not really a spoiler, that happens within like the first chapter of the book. And so that's really interesting to see him trying to deal with that, as well as his relationships with Zoya, and also there's Jenya and David and other characters from the original trilogy, which is super fun. Nina is off acting as a spy, so she's in Fjerda, and she's doing a bunch of like covert stuff there, trying to rescue Grisha, and so that's really interesting. So pretty much an overview is that you have Nikolai and Zoya trying to deal with Nikolai's demon and all of the mess that comes with that, as well as deal with running a country, having to deal with the Fjerdans who are trying to invade Ravka, as well as other countries that they just have beef with. And then Nina is off on her own, also doing important work, trying to free Grisha. And so yeah, the two stories don't really come together, which is interesting. You kind of have Nikolai and Zoya doing their stuff, and then you have Nina off doing her stuff. Personally, I got a little annoyed when we would be dealing with like the Nikolai and Zoya stuff and then it would like flash to Nina, because even though Nina's storyline was interesting, I wasn't as interested in it as I was with Nikolai and Zoya. So it was interesting, but also part of me just kind of didn't want to really know what was going on with Nina. I was just enjoying the Nikolai and Zoya stuff. So let me know if you've read it, if you agree with that. I know some people really love Nina, and so they liked seeing her, and I did like Nina, but not as much as the other two, so I kind of didn't really want her getting like, you know, time when we could be with the other two more. If you're a fan of the Grishaverse, if you've read the other two series, then you should definitely read this series for sure, even though I had some beef with it, which we'll talk about. I thought it was really good, and you should definitely read it if you like the other two series. Okay, now let's get into the juice of it. Also, I would like to say that the non-spoiler part of this is a bit of a rant review, which I didn't realize this video was going to be until I started talking about it, and then I got worked up. And while I did enjoy this book, and I do talk about some positive things I enjoyed, a lot of this is also some ranting, so that should be fun. Hope you enjoy. Anyway, continue with the video. So I'm not really going to be referencing like King of Scars and Rule of Wolves as separate entities. I'm kind of just going to talk overall about the story because it's like one large book, even though it's two books. They're both out, and so I just kind of want to talk about the whole story instead of like going between books. So first of all, this has to be talked about. Nikolai and Zoya, perfect. They are so great. The contrasting personalities between the two just made them so much fun to watch them fall in love and try and deal with their feelings for each other, as well as the obvious conflict of him being a king and him not really being able to be with someone like her. So that was just super fun. I loved their romance. It was by far my favorite romance out of any of the Grisha-verse romances. So let's talk about some of the cool plot stuff that happened. I thought that Nikolai dealing with his demon was really cool and was really interesting to follow. And I thought it was really interesting how we met three of the saints, or we're not really sure, they're not really saints, they're more like really, really powerful Grisha who have survived in this weird in-between world in the fold, which was kind of interesting and kind of unexpected, but I thought that was super cool. And I really liked how Zoya was able to work with Juris to be able to grow her power and just become this like bomb-ass bitch. So I thought that was really cool. It was really sad when Juris died, but also really cool how Zoya was able to use the dragon as an amplifier. And then we'll talk about the end later, but obviously what happens at the end is super cool. So I really liked that plot point. What I didn't like so much was bringing the Darkling back. I just thought that that was completely unnecessary. I didn't mind it in the first book because we find out that Saint Elizaveta was trying to bring back the Darkling. And at the end of that book, we find out that she succeeds. And it's unnecessary. If she wanted to keep that plot point there, and then they tried to do that, but then it didn't like work, that would have been fine because that was what was kind of driving a lot of the plot in the first book. But the Darkling actually comes back, and it's like, why? I really enjoyed the Darkling and his character in the first trilogy, so don't get me wrong, he was such a great villain, but why bring him back? I feel like it basically undermined everything that happened in the first trilogy. Everything that Alina did, everything that Alina sacrificed her power for in order to get the Darkling dead. Get him dead. Literally the whole plot of the first three books was trying to vanquish the Darkling, and they finally do it at the end, and I was perfectly fine for him to be dead. So then he just got brought back, and I was like, what? I was like, he's dead. They spent so much work trying to kill him, and now he's like back. It basically just feels like a cop-out in the same sense that like the Star Wars sequels were a cop-out, because we need a big bad villain, obviously, for our plot, and so let's just bring back the old one. This is like Palpatine 2.0. It's like, why? Why couldn't they just think of a new threat instead of bring back an old one? So this also brings in the fact that we see Alina again. And honestly, I just feel bad for Alina because she worked so hard and lost her power and finally killed this man. And then 3 years later, like Zoya hits her up and is like, hey, the Darkling's back. Like he wants to talk to you. Like, can you meet up? And poor Alina's like, oh my gosh, like what was all this for? He's literally back. As much as I liked seeing Alina again, seeing Alina and Mal, I was also very content to like never hear from them again. Because at the end of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, we find out that Mal and Alina are living together at the orphanage, they're raising kids at the orphanage, and they're living like a content human life. And I just really liked that, and I really liked the fact that she wasn't known, she was anonymous, and I was perfectly fine to just let that be on its own. I was just like, yay, Alina and Mal are happy together. I want them to live together. I don't want them involved in drama anymore. But no, 3 years later, they got pulled back into the Darkling drama. Like, homegirl's been through enough. Like, she's been through enough. She shouldn't be dealing with this crap again. I really liked when she was referred to, like, ambiguously. At Zoya's coronation at the end, it says the girl with the white hair who had the veil covering her hair, and they just refer to her as she's always there, but she's living anonymously. And that's just what I liked, but they just brought her back, and it just, I don't know, it didn't sit right with me. So what do you guys think about that? Let me know if you even like the whole Darkling being back and then just bothering Alina and Mal again. I'm like, leave them alone. They already had to deal with that. Leave them alone. Okay, so we'll talk about the Darkling a little bit later, but let's move on to Nina. So let me know if I'm the only one who thinks this, but I thought that Nina's new romance with Hannah was very abrupt. For me, it was like too soon, because King of Scars begins and she's still like super mourning Matthias, like bad, you know what I mean? She's like hearing him in her head, and she finally lays him to rest and is able to move on, but then that same day she meets Hannah and kind of starts this new thing, and for me it was like too soon. I just kind of didn't really want Nina to exactly have a new love interest. I was more interested in her just like going off and like freeing Grisha and like being a bad bitch, which she still did that even though she was having the love interest with Hannah, and I really liked Hannah's character. I thought she was super cool. And I liked the two of them together. It's not like I disliked their romance. I thought they were cute, but I was also just kind of like, too soon. And maybe it's because I'm coming off of like having watched the TV show recently that I'm like seeing Nina and Matthias together, but I'm like, I just don't really like want to see Nina with anyone else. I would say the coolest part of that storyline was Hannah at the end, where she killed Prince Rasmus and tailored herself to look like him and then impersonated him at that big meeting. Like, that was crazy of her, and that was like so dope. I was like, dang girl, like, go you. So I just thought it was really cool how she did that, and I thought Hannah was like such a cool character and like super dope. So I liked their storyline. I didn't really have anything like bad to say about it. It was just mainly when I was reading about Nikolai and Zoya and then it would cut to Nina, I would just kind of like sigh. I'd be like, oh. It's like I have to read through the Nina stuff before I can get back to like the real stuff that I want to read. But overall, I did like Nina's storyline. I thought it was fine. The next thing I want to talk about is justice for Isaak. I liked Isaac's character so much. I thought it was so cool how he was impersonating Nikolai and how he was falling in love with who he thought was the princess but was really Mayu. I thought Isaak was the best, and then he had to die. For what? For what? I think it was so unnecessary that he had to die, because Nikolai was there and basically saw Mayu stab him. So I just think it would have been a lot more interesting if Nikolai had stopped it from happening, been like, hey, she's about to stab you, and they still like arrested Mayu, or Mayu tried to kill herself, but Isaak didn't have to die. And I just thought it would have been more interesting if Isaak got to know the real Mayu and got to know her reasons for why she was gonna do it, and then they eventually like found a way to be happy together, like after the fact that she literally tried to murder him, but they just kind of like still came together after that. That would have been so much more satisfying. But no, Isaak just died. I was so mad when I read that. Like, I really liked Isaac's character, and I was so mad that he died. So let me know if you agree, if you think it was necessary. I just don't think it was necessary. Like, it didn't have to happen. It didn't really provide that much like character growth for anyone. It just kind of made everyone feel bad. It made Mayu feel bad. It just kind of like sucked. And I think something more cool could have been done with it. Could have been done with his and her relationship in the end. So RIP, justice for Isaak, didn't need to happen. I was very mad about that. Lee, why? Why did you do that? Like, why? Like, I loved Isaak. Why? Now that we're on the topic of unnecessary deaths, let's talk about the death that literally took a whole star rating off of my rating for this. I would say before this death, I was gonna give this book 4 out of 5 stars. I was really enjoying it, really liking the plot. But after David's death, I literally bumped a whole star off of it. I was like, this is automatically 3 stars. I was so angry. This is another example of a death that was so unnecessary. So unnecessary. It provided nothing. It provided no character growth for anyone. It just made everyone sad. And I understand that authors are always like, ooh, like who should I kill to make the people cry? And it worked. I was literally just like streaming tears when David died. I was distraught, but I was angry. Like, I was mad. I was literally reading the book. I was like, this is ridiculous. And the fact that it happened right after him and Jenya's wedding, or their like kind of vow renewal, since they already got married. I was literally so happy during the wedding scene. I was tearing up out of like happiness for that. Loved that scene. And then like a chapter later, David's dead. She just didn't need to do that to Jenya. Jenya hasn't been through enough First, she was raped by the king for like the majority of her childhood, and then she was tortured by the Darkling and had her eye ripped out. And now David died. Like, why did something tragic need to happen to her? That's what made me so mad, is that Genya has already been through enough. Like, she really needed to have her husband and the love of her life killed? No, unnecessary. Like, if you can find a legitimate reason for why David needed to die, like, drop it in the comments, because there's no reason for it. And it made me so mad that I literally took a whole star off. I was upset about Isaac's death, but this death, I was just like, what? Like, Leigh Bardugo, I am coming for you. Watch your back. Anyway, I have to stop because I could just rant about this for hours. Okay, another thing I want to talk about with both of these books, but specifically Rule of Wolves, is there were too many perspectives. So we obviously had the main three, Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina, which I was down to have those three, but then we also got introduced to Mayu's perspective and the monk. Now, Mayu's perspective I could tolerate because I liked her storyline with her brother, but like I said, I didn't even want the Darkling back, and then he got a perspective. I just didn't really care to be inside of his mind because he's not an interesting character. He's just evil. There is no character development for him. So I don't really care that he's like trying to come back and he's trying to win over like the followers of the Starless One and all that stuff. And there wasn't tons of his perspective. I think it was maybe like 3 chapters, but every time one of his came up, I was like, I don't care. And none of his chapters really added anything to the plot. They really didn't. That's another thing that I have about the Darkling situation is, especially in the second book, him being alive added nothing to the plot. It literally added nothing to the plot. He was basically kept prisoner. They brought him to see Alina and he, used them to get his powers back, and he escaped. Then he walked around as a monk for a while and tried to like lead these followers of the Starless One. So if we talk about him, let's move on and talk about the ending. So let's talk about him at the end, where he offers himself up to go into the Thornwood and be in an eternity of anguish and like torture in order to keep the fold from like spreading into the real world. This was just weird for me. And I was perfectly fine. I was like, listen, if the Darkling wants to like be in like agony for the rest of his existence, like that's fine by me. Like he was pure evil, so like he deserves it. But even up until the very end, the Darkling's like, I'm not sorry for what I did. I do not repent. And then he like dies. It's just like, then why are you back? If you're gonna have no character development and you're not going to change at all, why do we care to see your character again? And it was very, very slightly hinted at during his chapters that maybe, just maybe, he understood why people would like prefer to have goodness instead of evil. He said something about the fact that he's the starless saint, but when people look up at the night sky, what do they look for? Like they look for light, they look for stars. They're not looking to see like a black sky. And it kind of made him seem like, oh, maybe he's like catching on. And obviously Alina said something to him like, you don't have to do this. Like you don't have to be this way. And he did think about it. He didn't think about it for very long, but there were little like moments where it was like, oh, maybe he's gonna do something. So if he wanted to sacrifice himself into the Thornwood at the end, it would have been nice if it would have been because there was a little bit of character development and he was like, you know what, like I low-key deserve this, I'll do it. But no, he only did it because he wanted to be remembered, and he said, I'm only gonna do it if you like erect altars to me. And if I was them, if I was Zoya, I would have been like, sure, we'll make you a literal saint, like go into the tree, and then just not have done it because he doesn't deserve it, he's evil. So I think the reason for all this is that Leigh wanted to find a way to bring the crows back, which we can see from the very last chapter. They decide that they need the crows in order to steal the heart of Saint Felix in order to like swap him out for the Darkling so that the Darkling isn't in suffering for all that time. Because Zoya's like, shoot, like I kind of feel bad about this. Maybe he shouldn't be suffering. Like let's just kill him. Like let's just grant him death so that he can die, so that we don't have to have that on our conscience. So when I finally read that last chapter, I was like, okay, maybe this is why she did all this. Maybe this is why she brought the Darkling back, and why, I mean, that's it. Why she brought the Darkling back was so that she could, make this plot that they need to go steal something in order to put it into the Thornwood and whatever. I just think that it could have been left out. She could have found some other way to bring the crows back in. Personally, I would have preferred if the story was mainly about dealing with the Fjordans. That's what the main plot was about, but then we just had this weird Darkling subplot that was like super unnecessary. Okay, I do want to end on a good note because I realize I spent a good portion of this review kind of like ranting and talking about the things that I didn't like, but I do want to clarify that I did like the book. There was lots of parts of the books that I did like. Like I said, I think the most redeeming part of the book was Zoya and Nikolai. I just lived for their scenes. I also really liked seeing Zoya's character development because, like, hint hint, like that's what we like to see as readers. We like to see that she starts off really like hard, and in the first 3 books we literally hate her. We think she's just a bully, and we see why she is the way she is, and she becomes to be more compassionate, and at the very end she like lets in like love, and that's what allows her to be able to transform into the dragon. So I really enjoyed her storyline. I thought it was super cool that she became a dragon. I also thought it was like kind of crazy because in my head, like the Grishaverse doesn't have dragons. They have magic and all that stuff, and I know that they had like the magical amplifiers, but I wasn't expecting like kind of like mythical creatures like that to be in the Grishaverse. So it was kind of weird for me to wrap my head around that there was like a dragon in the series, but I was like, whatever, I just decided it was cool. So it was just so dope how she saved the day and then becomes queen. That's awesome. And if anyone had to take Nikolai's spot, then it should definitely be her. It was also kind of great seeing Nikolai just kind of relinquish himself from being king on the final battlefield, because overall he just loves the country, and so he wanted to do anything he could to protect the country. So he let his demon out so that he could, you know, help save his country. So I thought that was really great how, you know, he realized that he just wanted to do the right thing over, you know, keep his throne. And Nikolai and the demon was like another thing that was kind of cool, how he eventually learned how to live with it. So it's kind of part of him now and he can control it, and I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, like I said, like him and Zoya's love really kind of made the books for me. If I didn't have like those 2 strong characters, I really probably wouldn't have liked the books, but those 2 characters were just so great on their own, and then when they come together they were just so good. So it's weird because I had very mixed feelings about the book, because half the book I really loved. I loved Zoya and Nikolai's romance, their individual characters. I thought they were so great, and like I said, I think that their romance is my favorite out of all of her books. But then at the same time I also kind of had issues with the Darkling plot, and I didn't really have issues with Nina's plot. I just wasn't really interested in what she was doing. So if I had to like say, did I like the book? I would say yes. Would I say that I loved the books? I guess books, we're talking in general about both of them. I wouldn't say that I loved them, like was obsessed with them, but I thought that the books did some things really well, and I also thought that they did other things not so well. And maybe, you know, my opinions will change over time. These are just kind of my initial reactions to reading the book. But David's death like really did like knock it down for me. Like I think from then on I was still enjoying the book, but I was like kind of over it. Lee, like, why did you do that? Come find me, like, let's talk. Come find me, Lee. Like, we need to have words, because, well, I have words and you can just listen, because David deserves better. Not even David, but like Genya. Like Genya deserved better. I was obviously mad that David died, but I was mad for Genya because Genya just didn't deserve that. Anyway, guys, these are some of my thoughts about the King of Scars duology. So let me know in the comments about anything that you disagree with or that you agree with me. Like I said, I have really strong opinions about it. This is a book that I was reading it and I was literally having just like these strong opinions that I would have to stop and like send Snapchats to my mom of me talking about it and just ranting. And so I thought it would make a good video to talk about because we love strong opinions. So let me know all of the thoughts that you had about this duology in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and also subscribe. Thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed and who watches my videos. I really appreciate it. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.